You can only make shifts in 3 areas. And that's where the science comes in. You can shift your mindset or inner world. You can shift your strategies. The biggest strategy you have is your business model. And you can shift execution, which includes having systems for what you're doing. I don't think it's the strategy that is the big lever. I think it's who they are.
Welcome to Revenue Rearview, the show where founders, CEOs, and revenue leaders look back at the moments that changed everything. The breakthroughs, the blind spots, the turning points, and the lessons that can help you move forward faster. Let's dive in.
Two exits, 78 million in revenue, 3,000 episodes of The Conscious Millionaire Show. Most people would call that a finished career, but my guest today calls it just the warm-up. JV Crum III has spent his life proving that the thing you've written off as impossible is usually just the thing nobody's practiced yet. It's a whole premise of his new book coming out, Achieve Your Impossible, the new science of ultra performance. JV, welcome to Revenue Rearview.
Well, I am so excited to be here with you, Midori, because it's been a while. You've been on my show. I think we've known each other a decade. And both of us are in that process of creating new identity and new futures because we want to impact the world differently.
Completely. And so what I love, JV, what I was telling you before we hit record is I had all these questions for you. And as JV and I always do before a show, we always talk for a bit. I'm like, okay, we're scrapping every question I had and we're just going into it because the things that you have going on, JV, since the last time we talked are quite substantial. You know, from living in the United States to now being around the whole world, living in different cities, and just your whole premise on life and where you were. So let's start there because there's a lot to share. And I want to get into this whole, what transpired, because what you said to me, again, in our, let's call it the green screen room, is you said, I went to Barcelona, I was living there. I'm like, why are these people so lazy? And that was kind of the spark that kind of changed things for you. So talk about that.
Sure, absolutely. So I had been thinking about this for a while, that I wanted to go and live internationally. And so December 25th of last year, I got on the plane. It was planned, mind you, and initially went to Madrid, got there the 26th, finally got over to Barcelona, which I fell in love with in an hour. And in an hour, folks. Oh my God, I can't tell you enough good things about Barcelona. Well, and Spanish wine and tapas are two of those things, right? Because the Spanish wine, oh my God, amazing. And the cheeses are great. But I could live on tapas the rest of my life. And I never had tapas before I went to Spain. So yeah, when I first got there, I'm like, I'm like an alpha achiever type. I always have been. I think I came out of the womb that way. And these people genuinely, as a culture, have very little interest in getting ahead or working. As one person told me early on, it was in a coffee shop where she ran it, and she goes, we work to live. You live to work. And that kind of hit me as like, yeah, kind of lazy. Because I've typically worked, like 60, 80 hours a week most of my life. Even in high school, I was already doing this craziness. And the longer I was there, after I got through the shock that people didn't all want to build companies or something, I realized there was something to this. Like my habits shifted. Like here I am drinking an espresso in Montreal right now. So I picked up espresso drinking multiple times a day. And I ended up finally not having lunch. It's even in my schedule now, so 2. And if I got around to breakfast at 10 or 11, this was fine. And then of course, things reversed because I had to see my clients and do my show. So I was working 4 to 9 at night. So I'd get off at 9, and this is when I think about having dinner. It turns out that's the way everybody in Spain is thinking. There were restaurants that I went to that told me they did not open for dinner until 10 because no one would come, right? And that's when people are going to bed here. So all of a sudden I realized there was something to this whole idea of relaxing and enjoying life, which had never been my focus. I have to be honest. I had been always been chasing the next, what am I going to achieve now? Thing.
Wait, I have to make you pause for a second because I need the audience to understand when JV's talking like this, like he's worked all these different hours, etc. JV has a double master's in psychology. Is that right?
Yep.
And what else? I mean, you have some incredible incredible.
I have a
Things
law
of-
degree, specialing in tax law and an MBA, and started off and did my pre-med. I was going to med school, and I think this happens to people if they're kind of on the med lawyer kind of thing. You end up going one of those two places. So I ended up going to law school. It wasn't by plan at all, at all. None of this after the med school and my deciding not to go. None of it was by plan. I didn't plan to have 3 graduate degrees. It just kind of unfolded. You know how life is.
I
You
do. I
get
don't know about that part of it, but yes. Doesn't go
you
planned
just kind of
often.
get in the flow, and then new things happen. And like now, I'm building hubs in Montreal, London, and Barcelona. And I'm kind of laughing because it took a little first 6 months to figure out what I really want to do on this international life. And now I'm laughing. I'm going, well, somebody has to live in these places. Why not me? So
Why
it's
not?
like, and they're trade-offs. Fortunately, I am really good at change, and I don't need what most people need in order to feel stabilized. Like my stability and home is inside of me. So it's always wherever I'm at. But if you're going to play this game, you have to give up that you're going to have this stable place called a home and has your stuff in it. I have a 26-inch bag and a carry-on, and this is all I have, folks. And the carry-on's got all my electronic equipment from my computer and doing my podcasts and stuff. So I created a new joke for that one. I said, well, fortunately, most people are not going to see me 2 days in a row, so it really doesn't matter. I mean, I've got 5 T-shirts that are different colors. Like, you could see me 5 days, and 3 pair of shorts right now that are different colors, but they're all the same short. Like we're keeping it simple.
I love it. I wish I could do that someday.
Yeah, I
Inspirational goal.
think in all fairness, this might be easier for guys than for women, right? Because we don't need 12 pair of shoes. Although I do have 3 pair with me, but 2 of them are Hokas. So I could.
That doesn't really count. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't count. And 1 dress shoe. But I like adventure, and so this is really now that I'm getting into the journey, this is really fulfilling me because every day, like today, this is the hardship. As we're recording this weekend in Montreal, there are 3 major festivals that are 4 days long. So tonight, when we get through, I'm going to a Vietnamese festival where it's Vietnamese food and entertainment. Tomorrow night, I'm going to a music festival that's got multiple stages and 65 bands on African and Caribbean music. And if that's not enough, they're having the Montreal Food Festival, and I have to go there on Sunday to have food from Europe,
Go
Asia,
there.
Latin America.
I like
right?
your terminology.
Yeah. So I said, well, somebody's got to do this. And so, I had to figure out how was I going to handle 3 major festivals in a weekend. I go, well, you guys divide it up. And then I'm going back to the African and Caribbean music because I thought that'd be a great way to end the weekend.
I love that. So getting back to the premise of
Yep.
you're writing this book, it's something
Yeah.
different than what you were doing before about
It is. I've
performance.
taken a big shift with the company. And the first book was Conscious Millionaire, Grow Your Business by Making a Difference. So that's now the foundation. I only work with people who want to create wealth by doing something positive for their clients or the world. But I asked myself a question 2 years ago. I realized I wanted to build this for another 7 years, and I'm going to build a tech and then sell the 2 companies together. I said, what's the business you really wanted to be in? Like you'd already had it for 10 years, but I kept thinking something is missing here. I said, I really wanted to be in the human potential business. That's what I wanted to be in. And out of that evolved this whole idea of ultra performance. So now I'm attracting people who want to go someplace they haven't been before. They want to perform at a higher level than they ever have before. They want to get their top 1%, knowing that tomorrow that 1% might mean something higher. And interestingly, that's the same thing I'm doing with my life now, is that I'm looking at what are things that I thought were impossible and how do I achieve them? And that's what the book's about. How do you do that?
So that's right along the lines that the listeners sit here, right? We the people who listen to this show who are attracted to it have the same mindset as you. They want more. They get excitement from it, something that lights them up. So with that said, I feel like you are kind of wired that way as an ultra performer without even really thinking about it. It's just who you are. Steve Jobs was like that. Bill Gates, right? Like Elon Musk, they're like that. But you've made it into a science. You talk about your book is the science of it. So break that down for us a little bit.
Sure. Well, this goes back to that little thing all of us experienced together called the pandemic. which in my case was a positive experience. Mind you, I only went to the grocery store at 8 o'clock, so nobody was there. I didn't get COVID until after the pandemic, and then I got it 3 times because I wasn't wearing a mask, right? But I went through it with myself. And that's different than going through it alone because I have a relationship with myself, or I am probably my best friend. So I have a really good relationship that took a long time to build. I like myself. I enjoy my company. Like we go to the art museum together and have comments about the art and then reflect on it and then contemplate it together, like we're having a conversation, right? And listen, I know there are a lot of people listening that don't think that's crazy because they do the same thing, right? I discovered so much during the pandemic because I literally had nobody else I was living with. And what did I have to do but to sit around and think about stuff and scribble notes in a journal? And so one of the things I asked myself is that I was very fortunate. I had a lot of very early success, not just school, but financially. And I worked with a lot of clients, and some of them did really, really well. And some of them didn't. And I said, well, I'm the common element, so it probably was something other than just working with me. What were the ones that did the success at a high level and the ones that didn't? And then what was I doing? And by reflecting, I realized there were really 3 elements. Now, I have to tell you, I'm an essentialist, and I tend to get things to 3s, and then I'm not interested in anything else. So I said, what is this wealth all about? And then I realized it applies to losing weight or anything else. You can only make shifts in 3 areas. And that's where the science comes in. You can shift your mindset or inner world. You can shift your strategies. The biggest strategy you have is your business model. And you can shift execution, which includes having systems for what you're doing. I would say that everything else people write about in business books or my MBA, they belong in one of those 3 categories. And then I said, well, what is the real ratio? And then I checked it out with a lot of people, and they said, yeah, that's my experience too. 80% of this shift in wealth, success, building your business is the inner world. It's changing your identity. It's changing how you look at possibilities and opportunities. It's changing the game you're playing. It's changing how you think about your business, how you think about money, how you think about your team. 20%, which is what most business books and my entire MBA was about, is about the strategy and execution, but that's external. And here's what I realized, and I'll do it for you right now. I've done this for so many people and nobody's pushed back. I go, all right, what do you want to do with your company? And then they go bang, 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 but it's always they want it more. Otherwise, they're not talking to me, right? So, and I go, okay, here's the deal. For you to take your company here, you must first go here. And that includes your team. And then you can bring your business up. But if you stay here and you bring your business up, you're going to either sabotage it or bring it back down, or you're not even going to see the strategies, the opportunities, the possibilities, because you're still looking from your same level. You've got to up-level your business. And then I realized there was a sequence. Mindset always comes first, then strategy, then execution, and you might just be changing the mindset. You're changing your team, up-leveling them about what's possible. Let's talk about Elon for a moment. So he wants to go to Mars and take people there, and they're still alive when they get there. He can't possibly have a single engineer or scientist working with him who doesn't believe that's possible, or they would sabotage it. And a lot of people are walking around with teams and cultures that are literally sabotaging their success. And that's part of the mindset as well. Everybody has to constantly there's a lot of literature on growth mindset, and I think that's great. But what I've realized and write about in the book is there's an expansive mindset. And how are you expanding your mind to reach higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of insight, higher levels of beingness, of possibility? When I work with people, I have 7 of these performance mindsets, but ultimately, everything I've ever created with like 7, there'll be 1 that's the real one. And so the first place I start with anybody is shifting their identity about who they are. I have interviewed billionaires. I've interviewed lots of people worth various stages of millionaire. I would posit that the biggest difference between the millionaire, the 1 to 10 millionaire, and the 1 to 10 billionaire is how they see themselves and possibilities. And of course, they're employing different strategies of that because at size, You can have a different strategy, but I don't think it's the strategy that is the big lever. I think it's who they are. That's the big lever. You must become, like people go, at 20, I'd already made, millions of dollars, had the 4-story home. And people go, oh, you got there early, so early in life. I said, no, I decided at 5. It actually took me 20 years, but that's because I kept thinking that's what I wanted. And I changed my identity from being this little boy who grew up in this town of 200 or 300 people and nobody had any money. And my parents, had a poverty mindset for sure. And saying, I'm not interested in this. This is not where I'm headed. I'm going someplace else. And I got there. But it's because I changed me first, not the other way around.
Okay. So with that said, I'm totally bought in. I've done meditation and hypnosis and all these different things. Right. And I totally have seen it happen where you go from one person and then something clicks in your head without you even, it's just subconscious and you start playing bigger. But JV, are there, what do you suggest when you're working with someone and you can tell they're playing here, right? Maybe they have a $2 million company, but they have big aspirations and they have all kinds of ways they want to get there. But it starts with the brain. So what do you advise them to do to help change that?
Oh, that's the fun part. So I also have 9 years of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and I was fortunate enough, like Bandler's been on the show 4 times, to work with all these Tad James on, timeline therapy. And so I had the good fortune to work with all these original people who created different parts of NLP. And so it really informs a lot of what I do. I also studied Gestalt psychology because I was originally trained in clinical psych to be a therapist. It only took me a year of working with severely psychotic patients in the closed unit of a private psychiatric hospital to go, this is what I want to do with my life. Because these people were definitely not interested in growing. They were just, staying stuck in the psychotic realm, of which I believe they could get out of. But that's beside the point. So really what happened is I started to realize, and it was Gay Hendricks. I love Gay. And he's been on the show 5 times. I only know because I just know my database. I've done 3,200 episodes, but it's really about 1,800 unique people. And then there's some people who have been on a whole lot. And so Gay was on because one of the questions I asked is, what's a book you'd recommend for entrepreneurs? And I feel like it's the little Oprah club that at least JV's playing in, because all the books I ever buy come off of that list. And so a lot of people had recommended his book, The Big Leap. And I've read many of his books at this point. But the main thesis of The Big Leap is that most people are playing at level 3 where you're competent and you have multiple things you're competent at. Like, I'm competent at mindset stuff, but I'm competent at systems. I'm competent in a number of things. But the real players get to their genius level. I'm using Gay Hendricks' word. And when I did the exercises in this book, I realized that all my life, every time I achieved something new, it was preceded by a mindset change about possibilities of who I could become and what I could achieve. And that's when I went, oh. And then that was early stage of getting to ultra performer. I said, the thing you have been doing all your life is being an ultra performer. That's what you've done. And that's what you love. And that's what you want to help people do, is achieve something they've never achieved before. And so I've learned there is a little formula for choosing who are my clients. It isn't that they just have a vision, but they're committed. And I honestly believe if somebody's committed to going to X, I don't care what it is. You can be an athlete, you can be anything. I can get them there. But if they're not committed, it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
You've got to be, that is the magic. It isn't that you know how to get there. It isn't that you can make it simple and you do it in a day. It's that you've simply made a commitment.
100%. And one other part of his book, which I love, is how you can be really starting to see success, but then you sabotage it. I think he calls it upper limit problems.
Yeah, he calls it an upper limit problem. And that's the stuff I work on with people, because I have created all kinds of technologies where I go back and I find every time somebody has one of those, there are 2 things going on. 1, there's a piece of trauma that's not healed. 2, there's a memory of something that they have encoded that's a story that they tell themselves over and over again. And I go back and change that memory. And then I changed their timeline. And all of a sudden it never existed. And now they have this new memory that supports them going where they want to go, you know? And the trauma piece, it's like, I don't believe there are any accidents. And although that's something we've all read in many books, I came to really realize that 2 years ago in the summer. 2 years ago when I would notice over and over and over again that something would happen, for example, at 10 a.m. in the morning that I wasn't planning on. It just had a conversation I had with somebody. And then something would happen at 2 p.m. And if I had not had that conversation at 10 a.m., I wouldn't see the possibilities or wouldn't have the filters of looking at it the way I did at 2 p.m. that showed an opportunity that I probably wouldn't have noticed. And so I went, wait a minute, there's just no accident to how all this stuff is unfolding. The only differences are people living present, which is really critical, and in the flow of the energy where it's going. And so they notice them, or does it just go by and they never noticed it? I think that's a huge difference between how people operate as founders, entrepreneurs, team players, leaders. Are you aware and you actually see what's going on and notice that the pieces do fit together? And it wasn't accidental. You had that 10 a.m. meeting that we would call happen chance. I would call it synchronicity. And at 2 p.m., you see something different. And now all of a sudden, you're building a new division of your company.
As long as you take the action, right?
As long as you take, that's the execution. Execution. Yeah, I have a joke about that because, at one point there was a lot about the law of attraction. And I've lived at a Buddhist monastery to learn how to meditate particularly. And I said, well, the last time I checked, there's something called the law of action, because I can't think of anything that happened in my life that I didn't take some action that preceded the result I wanted, And that action might be going to the event where I met somebody, but you had to get up, get dressed, and go to the event, right? You can't just sit and think. At least it has not happened for me. Fort Knox has just never sent me that truck full of gold bars. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I've had to actually go out and find the clients and find the deals or buy the piece of real estate or whatever to make the wealth happen.
Okay, so let's go to that next level. So you've worked on your mindset and you know where you want to go. So you're clear on that. I think that's a really critical part of it.
Really critical. You got to know what you want.
Yeah. But then you still only have the same amount of dollars, the same team. What do you do next, which is realistic?
Yeah, it's very practical. Is when you shift yourself, you shift your identity about who you are. Like literally, I was shifting my identity from 5 to 25 that I'm a millionaire. At 5, I decided I'm going to grow up and be a millionaire, which I might as well have said a billionaire, but I didn't even know that word at that point. And I actually don't think at 5 I had any clue what $1 million was. I just knew I was watching television and those people in mansions looked like they had a whole lot better life than I did. And I rather imagine they did, right? Because we didn't even know where all the food was coming from. So the next thing, once you shift that identity, is you start looking for what are the leverages that you can utilize. Maybe that's your relationships. Like one of the things I've realized that I've shifted from living in one country to every year now. I've said this is a 3 to 4 year journey. I just kind of intuitively know that's what it's going to. But that doesn't mean it won't continue. But it's 3 to 4 as a minimum, and I'll be in 5, 10 countries a year, right? Like I already know I'm going to Lisbon in November, and I'm going to this Web Tech, which is the largest tech conference in Europe, 71,000 people last year. I don't even know who I'm going to meet. But what I'm really doing is building international partnerships. That's my frame. Those become lever points, right? So you start looking for what are the lever points that are going to give you the highest ROI with the least amount of input or effort. And where there's not all this friction, but instead it just looks like a natural thing to do to take that lever and push things up. So that's where you start next, because that's where you want to look at your strategies. Because if something isn't a natural lever point, why would you create a strategy that you're trying to implement that's going against the grain or the flow, that doesn't have a natural lever point, that you don't know someone that you can give them a call and all of a sudden implement that strategy? So I think a lot of people, A, try to have too many strategies, and B, don't correlate their strategies with the leverage points that they already have or could easily create. That's a very critical piece to this.
I feel like everything that you're saying is kind of just simplifying all the craziness that goes as high achievers. We have so much, and not just high achievers, but being someone who is always pushing myself, I have so many things going through my head. You talked about the story, right? That, like all that kind of stuff, and it's really
Absolutely.
busy in there. That monkey mind, and so it's from what I'm listening when I hear you talk, it's just really simplifying it so that you can kind of quiet that crazy going on in your head and stay with what's going to work.
And I think part of that is the philosophy that I've developed over time. For instance, when I'm working with clients and myself, my own business, right? I want to accomplish something with the absolute least number of moving parts. I want it as simple as possible. And I'm building a tech company, and we're going to be building a SaaS software that's got AI combined with it. And you'll also have the mindset, strategy, execution, but it's mainly how to be most productive. And I put this in my first book. So I have a principle that you cannot have more than 3 priorities in a day, but it's okay to have 1, but only 3. And for those priorities, you have very clear outcomes that you want to achieve that are concrete, that are measurable, and that's where you're headed. What I have found with, say, I'm working with somebody, like I'm just about to bring on a new client. Let's say it's a year engagement. I go, let's get clear where you want to be in a year. So we know where we're headed. Now we're going to talk about 90 days and we're not going to worry about the rest. And here's the talk I do with everyone. And I actually have fun with this. And I've done it on my own podcast many times. I go there. Here's the deal. Because we as entrepreneurs, as founders, as leaders, one of the great things about us is that we have an abundance of ideas. And the truth is many are actually good. But another truth is we can't accomplish them all. And I have found entrepreneurs naturally want to have 10 number 1 priorities, and then they fail at all of them because they can't do any of them really well. So here's the talk. There's only one number 1 priority, and we're going to get clear about that for the next 90 days, and we are going to achieve it. And the process of choosing that can sometimes be as important as the process of achieving it, because you have to look at, well, here's these 6 things, and they all look important. I go, great. Which one's going to move the lever? Which one's going to take your company where you really want to go? And you're willing to let go of the others, because if you try to focus on all of them, it won't work. And so they can only have one number 1 priority. But you know what? We grow businesses a lot faster, a lot bigger with one number 1 priority.
And with so many less headaches.
Less headaches, right?
Right?
And that's the whole thing about the priority coming down to a measurable result. Then you have focused actions, but you only choose actions that'll get to that result. Because again, as founders and entrepreneurs, we are so talented at going down side tributaries because we're curious. And that's a great thing. Don't get rid of your curiosity. Just channel it in one direction and be curious about how you're going to get to that result by 5 p.m.
Yeah.
That's the way to use the curiosity.
So now just one more question, and then we're going to go into our lightning round, is talking to our founders, because that's where my heart is with founders and CEOs, because that's where I've been for the last 3 decades. When do you know it's time for you to get the hell out of the way and let someone else come in? You've reached a certain pinnacle.
This is such a great question. I love this question because it's true for everyone. So we're very familiar with the phrase, what got you here won't get you there. Now, I want to throw in a little extra, and I'm going to answer your question. So I really have 2 groups of people I work with, mainly the 1 to 20 million, and then high net founders, CEOs, VCs. They're wanting something different than that phrase, what got you here won't get you there. They're in a place where what got them here no longer works for them personally because it's required too much of a sacrifice, typically. And they're doing what I spent most of my life up to this moment doing, working 60, 80 hours a week. They miss their family. They're not fulfilled. They're not filled with joy. They just have a ton of wealth. I love wealth. I love for you to have more wealth. I think it's better to have wealth that you're joyful in living your life as well. I just kind of have that principle. So as you're building at each stage, and it can be like you're at 1 million and now you're at 3 to 5, that's a different stage. You have to look at what is your role right now? Right now, I'll use myself as an example. I'm in the process of building 3 organizations that have never done that before. And I had to make some and I went to Spain, and now I don't want to work but 50 hours a week, which is to me kind of a little bit like being a slacker, but it's okay. I'm willing to do it. And folks, that was a joke. And I said, well, how am I going to do that? And the answer came immediately as soon as I asked myself the question. I said, you are going to get the right team, and you're going to give them all the work to do. And you're only going to do 3 things. So this is that get out of the way. I'll be the visionary who makes decisions. I'm very good at that. So that's a strong point for me. For somebody else, it might be that's not on the list. Second, I'll be the face. I'll do the podcast. I'll go to the events. I'll speak at places. I'll be the face. And the third one is I'll do the high level negotiating because I really like that and I'm good at it. And everything else is no longer my job. So I got out of the way because I was in the way, because I was doing things that I really shouldn't have been doing. And I think that's what's always meant. When you're in the way, you're trying to meddle in stuff that is not your strong point to begin with. And there are many people on the planet that could do it much better than you. And I think I had to go through this. I've helped clients go through it, is that we have to reach a point that we accept that it's okay for someone else to do it, that we don't have to do it. And what I've personally discovered, and I've watched other people discover it, is we've already been doing our strong points to begin with, right?
Yeah.
We should be doing something else.
100%. Completely agree. Stay focused on your zone of genius and hand off the other things that you can.
Just hand off the stuff, right?
100%.
And then you get liberated. You get actual freedom. I mean, people talk about, oh, I want freedom. Well, what do you want to be free from? Maybe it's doing all the stuff that was holding the company back. And now you let go of it and you just focus on your real strengths, and you just have to constantly re-evolve. Like, now maybe you need a bigger support team than you did at 1 million, at 10 million. Maybe you need 3 assistants that are doing different things. You call them right-hand people, whatever. They have titles, but they're really your people that are operating for you, and you're giving the orders, but you're not doing it.
And it's another shift. It's a big shift in our head. I know for you, going from around 80 hours per week on average to 50 hours, you talk about that. And I know you say it jokingly, but I know that you're being actually kind of very truthful about that. When we were talking before we hit record, you're like, I kind of feel like a slacker. And you laughed, but I kind of, I get that, JV, because I want that too. The team that I have right now, they're so brilliant. And this is the strongest team I've ever had. And so sometimes I'll be like, I'm not working hard enough. What's going on? So you have to kind of be aware and be okay with it, and then find something else that fills you. But you have to be aware of it and not take it as something that's a negative. And it's another adjustment.
Well, I have seen this with a lot of people I work with, and now that I went through my Spanish experience, I'm seeing it with myself. I honestly didn't know how to relax and do things that were just for me. I didn't know how to do that because I didn't have had a lot of experience with achieving stuff, but not a lot of experience with just consistent, like, oh my God, you're taking Saturday off? What are you going to do? Right? I didn't know what to do. So I've been going through a process of teaching myself, like this weekend, I'm going to 3 different music and food festivals. I went, well, that sounds like fun. And I'm hoping, because I want to make friends right now, because I'm in a new place, I'll meet some people and I'll have some great conversations, and maybe some of those will be friends, or who knows, I might ask someone out. I'm pretty spontaneous. I think I could handle that. But I'm having to learn right now, for the first time in my life, how to not work, because I didn't know. I knew how to work. I didn't know how to not work.
And it's easier said than done.
Yes, it's a whole new learning process.
Yeah. All right, JV. Are you ready to go through the lightning round?
I am. Listen, let me have a little more drink in my espresso.
Okay. All right. Yeah, your espresso. And in Italy, you didn't say Italy, but I think you still have that premise, because you said espresso every time that I've said something to you. You don't do a cappuccino after 11 a.m. officially. Is that kind of your motto as well?
Well, no. In Spain, I was doing it at 4.
Spain. That's why I love Spain so much. They're so easygoing. My heart is.
Oh my God, folks, listen. I traveled around to different places, and I'm looking forward when I go back, because I'm going to take an extra 2 weeks and just go to some places that I haven't yet been. But Sevilla, oh my God,
Beautiful.
And I went for a whole week, and I'm so glad I did. It's said, and it is true, they have the best tapas in Spain. and the cheapest. Oh my God, like 4.5, 5 euros of like maybe 3.5, $4 US. Or you're going, what? Um, the wine is great, but Seville was just so wonderful. I just fell in love with Seville. It's just amazing. And
There's so many parts of of Spain that I just love, and it's the people. I think what it comes down to is the people, the way that they live, their approach to life, their traditions, their vibrancy. I have to have energy around me, and it didn't matter where I was in Spain. I always felt that. So I love it.
I think that's absolutely true, especially Barcelona.
Barcelona's my favorite. I love everything about
Barcelona.
it. Have you been to the number one bar we're totally going off topic, but real quick, have you been to the number one bar in the world yet in Barcelona? It's
No.
located in Barcelona.
What is it?
It's called Paradiso Paradiso. Look it up. And when I was there, it went from 2 to number 1, and you go in there and it has the whole Gaudi feel inside of it. You have to wait in a long line. It's a speakeasy to get in, but so worth it. You meet amazing people. The drinks are beyond anything that you've thought of. It's not a cocktail. It's an experience. So you just have to, even if you're not into cocktails, you just have to go. And I can encourage everyone listening to this to go find this bar and go experience the drinks and the way that the people are, and look for the secret room. Just pay attention. It's amazing.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And that's interesting you said experience, because my learning curve is actually pretty fast in learning how to spend time doing something other than working, because I'm all into experiences. In fact, last year I wrote spontaneously. I was at the Oze coffee bar in Boulder where I was living, and I just said, I want to write down, I'd heard of doing this, but I don't know, it just came to my mind. It took me 2.5 hours, 100 goals for the rest of my life. All right. Out of the 100 goals, I just started and just let it happen, right? Like one of them is 10 goals. It's like to go what I consider 10 best restaurants in the world, because I'm a foodie, right? 10 amazing conferences. The one that got on number 1 was Davos. And then I said, well, hell, if you're going, you might as well keynote so everybody knows you're there. So stuff like that, right? When I got through, I went back and went through it. Only 4 out of 100 had anything to do with buying something, material. The other 96 were all experiences I wanted to have. So that's been my toehold into learning how to go have a life other than working. As I've looked, what am I doing this weekend? Going to 3 different, festivals. I want to go have experiences, meet people, listen to, try different food, listen to different music. So I have found that really is what captures my attention now, is what are experiences I'd like to go have?
Well, you're in the right places to go find amazing experiences. So I love that.
I went to the jazz festival when I got here. I shouldn't promote it because it's the largest jazz. I love jazz in the world, but there are 2 million people. One of the hardest thing about it was learning how was I going to navigate so many stages outdoors. And I had to figure out, that's a side street. There won't be as many people on that side street to get from one stage to the next.
Yeah. That was your tactic. That was your strategy.
I had to figure out a strategy for how am I going to get there. And then I created a mindset. I will have a place to sit. And do you know, I constantly found, like, they had all these tables, kind of like picnic tables. But if you're one person, I kind of look around and go, does it look like there's a, 2-foot space somewhere? And I go over and I go, hey, can I sit here? And people.
And a great way to meet people, right?
It was also
all have something that you're commonly interested in.
Yes, sitting at the table and jazz.
Having a seat and yes. I love that. Okay, let's jump into the lightning round, because I could go on and on with you because you're just so fascinating. Okay, ready?
I am.
Let's do it. First question. You have an MBA, a JD, double master's in psych. Which degree actually made you the most money?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm still going to go through, and it's the one that I think makes me best at advising, although I don't give legal advice. I would say it's a JD. And here's exactly why. In law school, you typically take 6 courses a semester for 6 semesters, so 36 courses. You only learn 3 things in law school. Of course, you know that because I only think there's 3 essential things to anything. One is you learn how to identify the central issue upon which the whole case will turn. Two, if you want an A on the exam, you learn how to argue both sides equally well, even if you hate the defendant, right? Like they intentionally put inflammatory kind of hypotheticals out there so that you'll hate one side or the other depending on your values. And the third thing is along the way, you learn some substantive law. So when I'm advising people and building companies and, doing the things that I do, I'm always looking for what's the central issue here where everything's going to turn. And if I'm working with a client, my friends laugh because they don't think I know how to listen. I do. And I'll just listen. And I'll go, would you say that sentence again and change this one word? And everything opens because that was the word holding them back. That was the block. And so I'm looking at or this is the leverage point. If we focus on that, you're going to double the business. So I'm always listening. And when I'm looking out for my own investments, I'm going, so you would know that I just think very simply about these things, like AI is in my investment portfolio because you could be an idiot and buy 3 mutual funds and leave them alone for 10 years. And you will highly likely, I'm not giving you any advice here, probably be a lot richer, right? Because that's the trick.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by, just get it down to that essence. And the law degree is what taught me how to do that.
Okay. Great answer. Okay. Next one. You once ran, I thought this was interesting, JV, because I know a lot about you. I didn't know about this. You once ran 12,000 loads a year for Coca-Cola and Cargill. Harder to keep on schedule, the trucks or a podcast?
Oh, the trucks. The podcast.
I would imagine.
I have an interview flow on my show, and there's 6 parts, and I have how many minutes it should be, and it's a 27-minute recording. I got it down after 3,200 episodes. Yeah, I only started telling people that a year ago because I realized, well, this is really important that we pulled 12,000 loads. This is not accidental, folks. We had systems upon systems upon systems, and we had to train truck drivers who were not necessarily that concerned about being on time. I'm just saying it the way it is. And we had to train them to get there on time. We also had to train them that they were polite because we had a policy manual and people knew I had to run that company very militaristically because that's what people would respect. I couldn't be, I really prefer like soft negotiating and everything, but that didn't work. So they knew that if they ever caused a problem at a place that we were picking up or delivering, they'd be fired, period. End of statement. And then the whole world knew, and nobody did anything wrong for at least 6 months because they all knew what happened, right? And so we just made it clear. In trucking, you have dispatchers. Now, if you don't know anything about trucking, I'll just tell you this. At least in the era when I had a regional trucking line, it was very common that dispatchers would just cuss out the drivers. Okay, this was just normal behavior. We had a rule, you don't do that. You'll get fired if you mistreat people. Mm-hmm. So it didn't matter if you were the person sending them out for their loads or you were the person going and picking up the loads. We weren't going to treat people that way. But you know what happened? We were number one in our niche and we stayed number one in our niche for 18 years. And we didn't lose. Once we got a contract, we didn't lose it. 8 years later, we still had the contract because we had that kind of a culture. And at Christmas, I had the administrative staff would go out and get really big boxes of Hickory Farm because everybody would like Hickory Farm, wrap them, and everybody got a gift. So we did things like that, but it's not accidental that you get 12,000 loads and they get picked up and delivered on time. That is not accidental. It was by design.
Yeah. I feel like everything in your life is by design and it works. Is that fair?
No, it is true because my joke is I'm a systems thinker. And my joke is for me not to have a system, I'd have to have a system for not having a system. And I think it's true. I think
it is too. I totally think it's true. Our next interview will be about systems because I want to know more about what you do. Okay, but my next lightning round, 9 years of NLP and hypnosis training, party trick or unfair advantage in negotiation?
I don't use the phrase unfair advantage, but I would definitely say it's an advantage because I know how to build rapport very quickly. I know how to follow other people's patterns. And from an NLP perspective, and I have found that it works. I model the other person, not the other way around. So let's talk about negotiation. I mean, basically, if you just make it simple, you have hard negotiation where you're trying to outwin the other person. And you have soft negotiation where everybody kind of puts what they want on the table and then we find out how we can get it.
Yeah.
I prefer soft negotiating because it just fits my personality. But I tell you, when it's necessary, I am an attorney and I know how to be a hard negotiator and get what I want. Because if you don't with another hard negotiator, they won't respect you. They'll try to walk all over you. So it isn't that I'm actually trying to out negotiate him. I'm trying to have rapport with them.
Yeah.
And then we can get down to making some kind of a deal that works.
Love that. Okay. 78 million in exits and 34 bestsellers. Which one are you actually proudest of? And which surprised you more than you'll admit?
Oh, the bestsellers. Because I'm a money person, so the 75 isn't enough. So we were talking about how I kind of live in a world that I never really feel like I've achieved anything. And that's not like for people, I'm not sitting around beating myself up. I just have such high standards that I don't know what it takes for me to feel like I accomplished something because I generally don't feel that way. I'm just looking for what more could I do? And like I'm building a global nonprofit. I want to change the whole world. I don't want to just change one country. I want to have programs in 100 countries. It's just how I think.
I love that. All right, JV, I know that everyone who's listening to this right now is they're thinking, how do I get a part of this guy? So tell us, where can we find out more about you? And I think you even have a little something for our audience.
I do. So I create these hypnotic audios. So because of the focus on alta performance, and I genuinely believe every person on this planet, whether you're homeless or a street person or never went to college, I don't really care. Everybody can perform at a higher level. Everybody can achieve at a higher level. Everybody can take their life. And when I say a high level, I'm not just talking in some self-interested mode. I think we're all on the planet to contribute to making this a better place. And I believe that every human being on this planet can do that we can all give and make this a better world. In fact, I think it's the only way it becomes a better world substantially is for us to all create a new culture on this planet where we're all giving to help one another. You know, that's just how I see life. So I created this audio. It's the Ultra Performer Accelerator. I made it only 5 minutes focused. It's a lot harder to make a 5-minute audio than 20. I want you to go get it. And you can get it at consciousmillionaire.com/ultra, ULTRA. So Ultra Performer Accelerator Audio. And I want you to listen to it just 7 days, twice a day, morning and evening, and notice how you're shifting your energetics and beginning to perform at a higher level. That's what I designed it for. And I want you to have it. I don't care what level you are. If you've never started a business or you own 100 million or $1 billion business, this audio will help you get to your next level.
I'm going to go download it right after we're done here. I love that. And your book is coming out when? When can we expect that? Are you doing pre-sales? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so great. Achieve Your Impossible, the New Science of Ultra Performance. The book will come out second quarter of 2027. But we're going to bring out a smaller version of it. It's about 150 pages because that's really what people want to, that's what I want to read these days. I mean, we don't want to read 1,000-page Moby Dick or War and Peace for that matter. But at any rate, I did read those in high school. So then I'm bringing out in October and in January, we'll do a second launch, the Conscious Millionaire Manifesto, which will be a 30-page version of the big book. And we're just going to give that away for free. So, our goal is to get at least 30,000 people who've gotten that. But you know me, I'd be thrilled with 100, a lot better.
Yeah.
100,000. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what you think. I love it. JV, this has been so wonderful catching up with you and, listening to this next phase of what's going on in your world and all that's to come and just bringing it to the audience because I know that everyone who's listening wants to play at that higher level.
Right.
And you helped unlock a lot.
And I want you to know genuinely, I believe that you can. And I love seeing the biggest joy. People ask me about, what gives you the biggest joy in life? What I really discovered is seeing people, the lights go off, the bells start ringing, and they start achieving something they've never achieved before. That is more joyful to me than anything I could ever do or experience because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That is what it's all about. right?
Not agree
I want
any-
to see other people go to a new level
Yep. And then give back. Right?
and then
So I love
give
that.
back, right?
Yeah.
Because that's, I don't think, and in my mind, it won't surprise you because I did look at this about 5 years ago. I'm not interested in helping people build ripples. I want them to create tsunamis. That's what I want.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your
Well,
wisdom
thank you, and
everything
congratulations
else.
on your podcast. You know how much I love podcasting, and you're going to have just an amazing podcast that's going to attract and attract and attract more and more people because you are amazing. And this is so exciting to be here with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll put that in my pocket and keep that. I love it.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on Revenue Rearview. If today's conversation gave you a fresh perspective, subscribe, share it with another leader, and we'll see you next time. Because the best decisions are often clearer in the rear view.